What's going on, all of my pre-healthcare brothers and sisters? I hope that y'all are having a wonderful day. We're continuing on with our ATITs Like a Boss question review series, the reading portion, and today we're going to be talking about making inferences and drawing conclusions. The Beatles influenced the genre of rock and roll, just as Beethoven expanded the genre of the symphony. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr expanded the public's understanding of their musical genre and reclassified it as an anthem for rebellion. Their music transformed into the hippies' theme songs of the 60s. Beethoven similarly altered the public's understanding of the symphony. His addition of the chorus in the last movement of the Ninth Symphony attests to this feat. What does the author imply about the influence that both the Beatles and Beethoven had on music? Is it A? While different musically, both the Beatles and Beethoven invented radically new genres that general public became skeptical about. B? The Beatles and Beethoven revolutionized the audience perspectives of their respective genres of music. C? Neither the Beatles nor Beethoven let societal concerns dictate the way that they constructed music. As a result, their nonconformity gave birth to chaotic movements in music. Or D? Both inspired others to follow their lead to invent new genres of music. And the correct answer is B. The Beatles and Beethoven revolutionized the audience's perspective of their respective genres of music. The question asks you to determine what influence the respective musicians had on music. The author uses words like expanded, transformed, and altered to indicate their influence on music. Revolutionize is a synonym of those terms and best represents the intended inference. Although it may be tempting to identify the term invented with revolutionize, the second half of choice A creates an extreme that does not exist in the package. The musicians did not create new genres. Instead, they worked with their own genres to expand them. Also, the passage is no way indicate that the musicians fell out of public favor, so choice A is incorrect. The passage does not discuss societal concerns either, so choice C can also be eliminated. Not only does the passage not argue that the musicians invented new genres as discussed previously, but it also does not address any inspirational effects the musicians may or may not have had on other musicians, so choice D would therefore also be incorrect. One of the important gymnastic exercises in the original Montessori school approach is that of the line. For an exercise, a line is drawn in chalk or paint on the floor. Instead of one line, there may also be two lines drawn. The children were taught to walk on these lines like tightrope walkers, placing their feet one in front of the other. To keep their balance, the children must make efforts similar to those of a real tightrope walker, except that they have no danger of falling, since the lines are only drawn on the floor. The teacher herself performs the exercise first, showing clearly how she places her feet, and the children imitate her without her even needing to speak. At first, it is only certain children who will follow her, and when she has shown them how to walk the line, she leaves, letting the exercise develop on its own. The children, for the most part, continue to walk, following with great care the movement they have seen and making efforts to keep their balance so that they don't fall. Gradually, the other children come closer and watch and try the exercise. In a short time, the entire line is covered in the children balancing themselves and continuing to walk around, watching their feet attentively. Music may be used at this point. It should be a very simple march without an obvious rhythm. It should simply accompany and support the efforts of the children. When children learn to master their balance in this way, Dr. Montessori believed they can bring the act of walking to a remarkable standard of perfection. Based on the passage, which of the following most likely reflects Dr. Montessori's belief about learning? Is it A, children cannot learn through experience? B, not all children can learn through exercise? C, children can learn only through demonstrations? Or D, learning is less likely when fear is present? And the correct answer is D. Learning is less likely when fear is present. The second paragraph states that the line is drawn on the floor so that children do not have the danger of falling while walking on the line. One can infer that learning is less likely when children are afraid of falling. Although the passage discusses learning through demonstration, the author does not suggest that children can only learn through demonstration. So choice C would be incorrect. Aficionados of classical music frequently appreciate the characteristics of jazz, and some laypersons think the two genres are somewhat similar. However, jazz musicians are noted for their improvisational abilities, whereas classically trained musicians are often very reliant upon printed music. Although musicians in both genres must be very well versed in scales and various musical keys, jazz musicians must possess impeccable knowledge of the material in order to be able to perform and fulfill the requirements of their chosen genre. What does the author imply about the similarity between classical and jazz music? Is it A? It can be inferred that despite some opinions, classical and jazz music resemble each other quite remarkably. B? Both genres have the same roots in folk music, so musicians from one genre can play in the other without too much trouble. C? Despite some opinions that the classical and jazz genres are similar, musicians in the two genres have notably different skills. Or D, although the musical structures of the two are the same, jazz musicians are better at playing both kinds of music. And the correct answer is C. Despite some opinions that the classical and jazz genres are similar, musicians in the two genres have notably different skills. Using the word however, after stating that some laypersons think the two genres are somewhat similar, indicates that the author believes the opposite. They are not that similar. This eliminates choices A and B, which contend that the two genres are quite similar. Choice D is incorrect because the author does not make a judgment regarding which player may or may not be the better musician. Instead, the focus is on the differences between the two musical genres. Christopher Columbus was particularly influenced by the maps of the ancient geographer Ptolemy. Ptolemy argued that the world was round, which went against the belief of the day that the world was flat. Columbus sided with Ptolemy on this question and set out to prove that it was so. At the time, it was widely held that sailing west from Europe would lead to certain death. Believing that the world was round, Columbus thought that one who sailed west would wind up in the east. Other scientists of the day rejected this idea. So Columbus wrote to a respected Italian scholar, Paolo Toscanelli, to ask for his opinion on the matter. Toscanelli supported the idea of Columbus's trip and sent word to Columbus in 1474. After receiving Toscanelli's encouragement, Columbus focused all of his thoughts and plans on traveling westward. To make the journey, he would require the help of a generous financial backer, so he went to seek the aid of the King of Portugal. Columbus asked the king for ships and sailors to make the journey. In return, he promised to bring back wealth and to help to convert natives living in the lands to the church. Portugal refused, and Columbus approached Italy unsuccessfully as well. He went to Spain next. Queen Isabella of Spain agreed to support the journey. It took time for Columbus to convince her, but he did succeed, and she paid for the trip. Part of what led the Queen to believe in Columbus was the way that he focused on his goal for such a long time with great intent. He spent the best years of his life working toward his dream, remaining persistent and determined. Legend has it that even during his first voyage, members of his crew became frightened and uncertain, wanting to return home, but Columbus pressed on. The eventual discovery of the Americas was the reward for his commitment. More than 500 years later, the geography of the world is often taken for granted, but Columbus was an early visionary whose results proved at least some of his theories were correct. Based on the passage, which of the following can be inferred about Queen Isabella? Is it A, she wholeheartedly believed that Ptolemy's vision of the world? B, she was open to new ideas about the geography of the world? C, she was an enemy of Portugal and Italy? Or D, she believed Columbus's expedition would fail? And the correct answer is B. She was open to new ideas about the geography of the world. Although the passage does not state that Queen Isabella was open-minded about new ideas, it can be inferred because she believed in Columbus's vision and eventually supported his expedition. Choice A is incorrect because Columbus had to convince her to support his journey in the first place. If she had believed Ptolemy's visions and ideas wholeheartedly, she most likely wouldn't have needed to be convinced at all. Based on our passage that we just read, what can be concluded about the King of Portugal? Is it A, he lacked enough support for Columbus's vision to fund it? B, he agreed with Ptolemy's vision of the world? C, he had no financial resources to offer Columbus? Or D, he and Queen Isabella were enemies? And the correct answer is A, he lacked enough support for Columbus's vision to fund it. Based on the passage, we can conclude that the king lacked enough support for Columbus's vision to support it. Choices C and D are incorrect because the passage suggests that the king had the resources to be a financial banker, but it does not discuss the king's relationship with Queen Isabella. Freud was the first psychologist to conceptualize the idea of the unconscious, or the proposal that people acted for motivations of which they were unaware. Freud believed that unconscious motivations were most effectively revealed through dreams, so he frequently had his patients review and analyze their dreams. Since Freud's initial proposal, psychologists have built upon his original conception. It can be inferred that Freud established what relationship between his theory of the unconscious and dreams. Is it A, dreams could reveal why people acted a certain way if they were not conscious of the motives behind their actions? Is it B, if people analyze their dreams, they could learn how to motivate themselves and take action? C, because dreams occurred while people were asleep or unconscious, most people could not remember them until Freud developed his theories? Or is it D, Freud was the first serious scholar to study dreams and speculate on their meaning? And the correct answer is A. Dreams could reveal why people acted a certain way even if they are not conscious of the motives behind those actions. The first half of the second sentence states that Freud believed that dreams revealed unconscious motives. The passage does not state whether or not Freud was the first to study dreams, only that he was the first to develop a theory of the unconscious. In the animal kingdom, many symbiotic relationships exist between two species that can take action known to be mutually beneficial to both parties. In the water, clownfish have such a relationship with sea anemones. The fish are one of the only species that can swim unharmed in the anemone's waving tentacles, as typically the tentacles would sting any animal that swam nearby. However, the clownfish is immune to the sting of the tentacles and is therefore protected by them. In return, its presence helps the anemone stay clean, avoid attacks by parasites, and remains free from infection. What conclusion can be drawn from the relationship between the clownfish and the sea anemone? Is it A, it is mutually beneficial to both creatures and allows for harmonious living? B, it is a parasitic in nature and often leads to the destruction of one of the two creatures? Is it C, in every pairing, one of the two creatures ends up as more of a beneficiary than the other, which leads to disharmony? Or is it D, separating the two would mean imminent death, therefore the relationship is not only beneficial but also necessary? And the correct answer is A, it is mutually beneficial to both creatures and allows for harmonious living. The two creatures do not destroy each other, so choice B can be eliminated. The crucial component of the relationship is harmony. Each of the creatures benefits equally from the other, and eliminating choice C can also occur. Historically, the study of creativity has concentrated on persons known for innovation. Early creativity studies focus on creative geniuses such as Einstein, Mozart, and Shakespeare. This type of creativity is known as Big C creativity. However, as research on creativity progressed, a corresponding interest in how people could be creative in smaller ways on an everyday basis emerged in that discipline. Scholars began to investigate how ordinary tasks such as cleaning, driving particular familiar routes, and completing work and schoolwork can be conducted in innovative ways. The focus of creativity research has been labeled little c creativity. Which of the following is the best prediction of which the author's conclusion about creativity will be? Is it A, it is not possible to conduct research on creativity because of such an elusive trait? B, Creativity is only attracted in big C cases where geniuses are concerned. C, because creativity can now be found in even the mundane, it is no longer a subject worthy of study. Or is it D, creativity is multifaceted and can be found in various areas of a person's daily life? And the correct answer is D, creativity is multifaceted and can be found in various areas of a person's daily life. The passage draws attention to the complexity of creativity and puts a rest on old assumptions about how creativity should be defined. Choice D is therefore the only correct answer. The current tests for measuring IQ, or an individual's intelligence quotients, were developed during the early and mid-12th century. Their use was popularized by Terman, who designed specific tests for the use of the U.S. Army. Some psychologists today assert that the traditional system of measuring IQ should remain the sole method of assessing intelligence. Historically, the test has been constructed based on the assumption that there exists one general intelligence factor that impacts an individual's intellectual capacity. The validity of this assumption has been challenged by other psychologists. In particular, Howard Gardner was emphasized that of a unified conception of intelligence based on a single factors remain highly limited and unnecessarily constraining. Gardner was postulated as alternative theory concerning the existence of multiple intelligences. He posits that individuals can possess intelligence in particular areas such as linguistics intelligence, spiritual intelligence, spatial intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, musical intelligence, mathematical intelligence, and kinesthetic intelligence, among others. Gardner asserts that individuals can be extremely intelligent and exhibit talent in one area, while failing to demonstrate the same level of prowess in another area. His theory has been discussed widely, although efforts to obtain empirical evidence to support his ideas is still in process. What conclusions can be drawn about intelligence based on Howard Gardner's findings? Is it A, the IQ test, while flawed, remains the most important tool we have to test intelligence? B, intelligence is not limited to one's ability to take a test. Instead, there are multiple intelligences that a person may exhibit in any given area. C, intelligence is elusive and difficult to measure or determine. Therefore, the IQ test has questionable meaning. Or is it D, intelligence can only be determined through a series of tests. Therefore, students should be heavily tested in every subject. Well, I'm glad choice D isn't the correct answer. It is choice B. Intelligence is not limited to one's ability to take a test. Instead, there are multiple intelligences that a person may exhibit in any given area. The question asks you to identify a conclusion about intelligence that could be drawn based on Gardner's findings. Gardner lists multiple areas in which people can be intelligent and believe that intelligence could manifest in a multitude of ways. Choice A does not address the traits of intelligence and instead focuses on tests, so this answer can be eliminated. I hope that this video was helpful in passing your ATITs like a boss. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and comment down below. I always answer your questions and I love hearing your feedback. Please follow me on my social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and of course here on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe. But until next time, I will see you all in the next video. Bye!